Chair of Peace Jam UK.
Thanks very much, and I'm delighted and feel very privileged and excited to be talking at a meeting like this, which is filled with activists, with people who've been working for peace for many years. So thank you very much, Vijay, for inviting me, and I'm delighted to be here. I'm one of the directors of Peace Jam UK, and it's an international peace education program. And it works with Nobel Peace Laureates who have an input into the curriculum of the program. They come to youth conferences that we hold, and they too have certain sort of areas of action that they have delineated, a bit like our last speaker was talking about the 17 Sustainable Goals, certain matters which need urgent attention, which they think our young people should look at and address and start to understand. And the way I got involved with Peace Jam was through one of these Peace Laureates. It was through Professor Sir Joseph Rotblat. He was a nuclear physicist, some of you will know, a nuclear medical physicist. And he was headhunted, he was very brilliant, and he was working on splitting the atom in the 30s, as were all scientists. And he came to Britain just before the Second World War, and he was headhunted by the Americans to work on the Manhattan Project. And the reason he worked on the Manhattan Project was not at all because he really wanted to. It was because he believed at that time that if Hitler managed to make a bomb, then the only way to prevent him from using it would be if the Allies had one, and then perhaps he wouldn't. In later years, he thought that was flawed thinking, but that was his thinking at the time. So he worked on the Manhattan Project, and when he discovered, because intelligence came back, that actually the Germans were not making one of these bombs, they were fighting on too many fronts, and it was too expensive and difficult, he said, well, then we don't need to. And he resigned from the Manhattan Project and left. And that was an extremely courageous thing to do. He was branded as a spy. He was not recognized for his work almost his entire life, really until he received the Nobel Peace Prize. And that was for his work because he created, along with other scientists, an organization called Pugwash Conferences on Science and World Affairs. And these were scientists who understood the technology of the atom bomb and later the hydrogen bomb, and who wanted peace, and who fed back to the think tanks of their governments ways in which they could perhaps avoid conflict and advise their governments in this way. And Professor Rotblat was often asked in his life, because he had two goals in life. One was the abolition of nuclear weapons, and the other was the abolition of war. Because he said, once these weapons are invented, you cannot disinvent them. Therefore, we have to abolish war as an acceptable social means of settling our differences. And in order to do that, we have to change our thinking. And that is why he came on to the Peace Jam education program, because he believed passionately, firstly, that he wasn't going to achieve his goals in his lifetime, therefore he needed to hand on to the next generation. And secondly, because in order for our young people to understand what peace is, and as we all know, it isn't just not doing certain things, it is creating a wonderful artistic and creative climate to do much greater things than we do now. And he wanted to come onto the Peace Jam program to explain that this is what peace is. This is what a man or a woman of peace is. They are very creative people, and war and conflict snuffs all of that out so often. And he, of course, had experienced a great deal with the First World War. He was a small boy in Poland and suffered extreme hardship and poverty. And in the Second World War, he was living at the very sort of point of the creation of the atom bomb, and personally too, he suffered very greatly. So he wanted to work with young people, and he wanted to change their thinking. He wanted them to learn a different, creative way of thinking. And we have 14 laureates working on the Peace Jam program. Very well-known ones, such as the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu, slightly less-known ones, such as Shirin Ebadi, who's an Iranian civil rights lawyer, and we've just brought on a new laureate called Tawakkol Khaman, who is from Yemen, and who was a journalist and who worked also for women's rights in Yemen. And actually one of our laureates was Oscar Arias as well. And they contribute to the program. And the program runs all over the world, in Africa, America, India, and just latterly, despite Brexit, we put in an application under the Erasmus scheme to work in Europe, because there were a number of countries in Europe that wanted to have the program, and we wanted to work together to create a program which would cross all the countries' boundaries and make us even more international. And to our great surprise and enormous delight, we got it, and so now we're starting to move into Europe very much more. So to put it simply, really, it was Nobel Peace Prize winners mentoring youth to change the world. That's what we're about. So what exactly do we do? We have a sort of education triangle, and at each point, and schools and youth groups and people can enter at any point. We have education in one corner, inspiration at the top, action in another corner. And the education, we have curricula for young people from 5 to 25. Because we have this dream that if young people are taught how to resolve differences, how to control anger, to understand how to empathize with other people, to have global connections with other young people around the world, it will start to change their thinking. And we will have a generation growing up which knows another and a much better way of doing things. And then the inspiration is our laureates, and as I said, they contribute very greatly to the curriculum and take a very active part. They're on the board of Peace Jam. And they come to our youth conferences, which are held sort of through the year. It's a one-year voluntary program. Some young people, because it's a matter of changing thinking and finding out about who they are and what they stand for, and about a lot of things. Many children do it for more than 1 year. But so they come to the conferences and provide the most tremendous inspirational interchange between the young people and with their teachers as well. And then there's the action, which is engaging young people in service projects aimed at solving real community and global problems as part of the 1 billion Acts of Peace campaign. And it's this action that I really want to concentrate a little bit in talking to you today. Because one of our speakers was talking about the view from the top of the mountain. Yeah, right. Okay, so this was sort of expressed in a different way by one of the young people in our programs, a young boy of 14 from a co-educational school in Hampshire. And he said, and I'm quoting, he said what he got from the program was, education alone doesn't provide enough context. You learn from doing. Having an opportunity to plan a project independently, going out and discovering for yourself is what makes Peace Jam so powerful. Because it's what gives young people the vision and the belief, the self-belief that they can actually do something. They can change something that they see that needs doing. And that feeds on from changing something in your school, to your community, and then on to change the world. So when we began, 22 years ago now, we had what we called a global call to action. And this was where the laureates identified certain areas, certain subjects that they thought young people needed to know about and needed to take action on. So all the projects that they do are linked to these different areas. It could be human rights or water resources or a number of different things of that sort. And By 2014, we logged just over 1 million acts of peace that the young people had done. And our founders, who are, their names are Dawn Engel and Ivan Savanyev, and they are Americans from the wrong side of the tracks in Detroit. Average, ordinary, perfectly ordinary people with no particular advantages at all. And they created Peace Jam because Ivan met, when he's the musician, he was coming back from playing a gig one night, and he met friends of his that he'd been at school with standing on the street corners and carrying guns. And he went over to talk to them. He said, "What do you need guns for?" And they said, "We're defending our turf. And we've got business." And he said, to be good businessmen, you've got to be at school. And I haven't seen you in school for a very long time. And he talked to them, and he discovered that they had no time for their families, no time for the government, no time for their mentors, no time for the church. And it was only when, really? Thank you. Okay, I'll be very quick. It was only when it was only when he mentioned Desmond Tutu came up in the conversation that they said, "Well, yeah, I know that little guy carrying that is standing up for the whole of apartheid." And Ivan said to him, "Yes, and he doesn't carry a gun." And he had this idea that if you put young people together with a Nobel Peace Prize winners, there would something might happen. And they got all of this to happen. And the global call to action, they went to a conference, one of these social innovation conferences in California, and they just talked about what this program did. And a guy came running down from the back, and he said, "Come with me, I want to take you to somewhere where the food is better." I said, "Okay." And this man was called Meng, and he was one of the original people who put Google together. And they got talking. He said, "I want you to tell the people here what you've told me." And what he offered to do, what Google offered to do, was not money, but to offer the technology and the technical expertise they had to help us get the message out. And this global call to action of 1 million acts of peace turned into a project which is 1 billion acts of peace, and involves not just young people, but people in business, organizations right around the world. And it just shows what can be done by just young people in schools starting something off. And it also shows, as one of our other speakers said, how useful it is to link up with business, not to, just because Google might not be perfect in every single way, they have a lot to offer. We all have a lot to offer. And they have helped enormously in doing this. And I just to wind up, I just want to say we are totally convinced that ordinary, average people can tackle the toughest issues facing humanity. And we're not going to wait for our governments. We're not going to wait for our elected officials. We're just going to get together and we're going to do it. Thank you very much.